Good day, gentlemen, and thank you for being on this panel. We are going to have a discussion on military operations and counterterrorism. Just some background about myself and my company. My name is Koos Joubert. I represent the company DCD Protected Mobility. We are an armored vehicle manufacturer, and we have supplied many of our vehicles to NATO countries as well as African countries for operations in AU and UN missions to help defeat terrorism, protect innocent citizens, and try to bring peace to the region. Our products are deployed and used in the daily ground level activities of operations. We have a very good understanding of the threats and the consequences of the devastating effects of IEDs and landmines on military and civilian personnel. My background is mechanical engineering, and I don't always understand or have the passion for the political environment or political sciences. The topic of today, however, fascinates me because when I holistically look at the African continent, I see years and years of suffering, conflict, poverty, uprisings, protests, dictatorships, failed states, and coups happening. And I wonder by myself, what is it that leaders are doing wrong? Solving the complex issues of ending a homegrown Islamic insurgency or an external terrorist attack in a region takes a strong domestic effort to address the social, political, and economic issues that led to its creation. Does the country have the will? Does it have the power? And does it have the means to address the issues? Or will the country rather protect corrupt senior officials? The continent has so much potential with its people, natural and mineral resources, and why are we not exploiting these valuable assets? Many regional and international partnerships have been formed over many years to counter rising levels of violence and conflict on the continent. And still, the problems are not being solved. Military operations that cause civilian deaths and violate human rights are fueling terrorist groups' propaganda. So with that as an introduction, I would like the panel members to please introduce themselves and just give some background. Let's start off with Ramsey.
Thank you, Koos. Hello, everybody. My name is Ramsey Kanfor. I'm Vice President of Global Government Sales at SCS Satellite Solutions. My background, I'm an electrical engineer, been working in various technologies and the last 10, 15 years in satellite. At my company today, basically, I manage Africa, Middle East, and Asia Pac when it comes to government solutions. Mostly related to security and defense. And I'm looking forward to participate into this panel because I think terrorism and counterterrorism is one of the key elements that, at least from a satellite perspective, there's a lot of contribution that can be made for various countries, especially in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramsey. Mr. Hassan Saeed, could you introduce yourself, please, sir?
Yes, sir. My name is Hassan Saeed Sawantar. I'm the Director General of the Ministry of Defense. I recently assumed this position 5 months ago. And my background is interpretation, is politics, international relations. So basically, I was also regionally active. I was a former regional minister in Galmudug State, one of the states of Somalia, twice. And I was also Secretary General of a party, which is called the Alliance for the Future Party of Somalia. And recently I joined this government in this function as DG. So I'm quite happy to interact with you and to participate in this panel. And Mr. Koos Joubert products are well known. They are found all Africa, especially in Somalia. We have some of your vehicles here. AMISOM uses them. They are very good, sturdy machines. We know them, trucks. And you know, Somalia is the #1 country which is affected by mines and all improvised explosive devices. This is we are the most affected country in the world. So, and so we like to, of course, interact with you, and we'll see what kind of collaboration we might have in the future, even though our capacity is very limited. But let's say we have some friends that might be able to help us. And through systems, you know, there are different systems that we can get. So I'm quite happy to participate in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, for introducing yourselves. Yes, I believe you are in a very hot seat in a very difficult part of the world. And we all pray that things will change for the better and in the future. Let me start off by just reading to you the objectives of the AU, the African Union. It says that their objectives are to achieve greater unity, cohesion, and solidarity between the African countries and African nations, to defend the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of its member states, and then to accelerate the political and social economic integration of the continent. So just as a general introduction to my two panelist members, I would ask the question, how has the African Union fared so far? Are they standing up to the objectives? And let me just first get a general opinion from each of the panel members. Can be very general. Ramsey?
Yes, definitely. Obviously, again, I'm not very good in politics like you, Koos, but I think personally, again, it's always from a perspective of my work and my line of business. I've seen lately a lot of countries in Africa that really taking a proactive role of how to enhance, be it their digital infrastructure, on how to be part of the space development, for example, and how to create certain incubations within their country to knowledge transfer, to do the necessary knowledge transfer for their people and personnel when it comes to satellite and space development. So I think, is it part of the African Union? I mean, yes, it's part of the African Union vision, but I think there's a lot of countries take this on themselves and try to bring these initiatives. Now, if we go back to the security and defense or counterterrorism, I think there are many additional things that the African Union can do, especially to create these kind of fusion centers within, between multiple African nations, whereby taking the mission of reducing terrorism or taking some initiatives is not only a one country play, it's more multiple countries, regularized and managed by the African Union, especially to share the necessary information that can be very crucial to take decisions when it comes to terrorism. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of things to be made by the African Union to ensure that countries are collaborating together and sharing information together when it comes to fighting terrorism in Africa.
Son, would you like to add something in general about the mandate and the objectives of the AU?
It's for me.
Yes,
yes.
sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a very, very general question, but also vital question. Really, so far the African Union is relatively new, the union. So, and according to this mandate principles, I mean, we can say that really it's not functional, and it's just ambitious a proclamation. We don't have really in Africa unity. We don't have a cohesion, and they don't defend the territorial or political independence of its member states. For example, just recently, we were at loggerhead with the African Union because Somalia after 14 years of foreign presence, of African Union presence through AMISOM, we want to take back our country. And they've been resisting. And they came up with a plan, which previously the government of Somalia openly and categorically rejected. You know, there is not only a territorial sovereignty, there is also political independence of member states. So when you are not, they are not considering what you want, that they just want to impose you. What they want is according to their interests or the troop contributing countries, or that they see a liability to just move out of Somalia. And anyway, the transition would never have happened. Just move, you know, it would have taken 2-3 years. So again, something that our government refused was again voted, endorsed by the African Union. So this is very unacceptable. And Somalia right now is just on the brink, just like Morocco did. If they continue to refuse and to listen to our needs and what we want, then we'll have to take the position that took Morocco, that almost 30 years was out of the African Union. Recently returned, three years ago, they went back to the African Union, you know. Somalia today is in this position. So you see, there is a lot of things to do in the African Union. The mandate is just like the UN. So these are general principles, but in reality, you know, how things are, you have to be very realistic on the ground, how things are, no? So that's my opinion. As of course, officially speaking, this was my own expression, but also since I have an official position, the Somali government, of course, approves and welcomes these principles. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So very, very valuable inputs. And you are right. Amazon has been coming along a long way. And surely each country would like its independence, as you've stated. And you are one of the member states. So the African Union should listen to you. Right. Let me direct perhaps 1 or 2 questions more directly. Ramsey, perhaps to you first. How essential is communications, synchronization, and joint collaborations to fight terrorism and threats in Africa?
Yes, thanks, Cruz. So again, terrorism threats in Africa is not really a one country problem. Thus, I think joining efforts and collaboration are really needed between various African nations. Thus, the role, for example, of the African Union is to have this kind of mandate and basically ensure and work with the various countries to have this joint collaboration and efforts. Let me give you a more specific example. For example, when it comes to command, control, communications, computer, combat system, cyber intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance, which is known in the military jargon as C6ISR. This is a crucial to future multi-domain and joint operations. I mean, obviously, you cannot get different forces and countries to work together unless they can communicate and synchronize their efforts to achieve the ultimate goal of winning against terrorism or threats of any type of any shape or form. And thus, this is what I mentioned on your previous questions, is creating a fusion center, or maybe more technically a cloud center between various nations, specifically to exchange information securely between these nations, between the security, intelligence communities, and so on, treat the information and take necessary decisions against threats in a timely manner. I think this is something that is very crucial for the whole continent to win anything against threats and terrorism.
Thank you very much. I think one of the problems is also interoperability between the various troop contributing countries. So if you talk about command and control, if I can just follow on, you know, the United Nations has got a manual for equipment. And I think they have a manual for the light infantry battalion, motorized infantry battalion, as well as mechanized. Now, if you look at that equipment list, for instance, for a motorized infantry battalion, it talks about command and control and surveillance systems and communication systems. My question is that manual a very good guideline? Do troop contributing countries follow that guideline of the manual strictly, or do they not? What would you say on that?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know the details of this specific manual, but obviously, again, interoperability is a major factor here that needs to be considered. Definitely, many manuals provide good guidance, but at the end of the day, again, when these specific countries with these specialized units start discussing to solve how they can integrate a bit better and how they can solve any potential interoperability, definitely you need to tweak the manual somehow on certain guidelines. At the end of the day, when I talk about information, is in my perspective is the key element. When you share information, I know there are some sensitivities, but I'm sure there are ways to share the necessary information for one country to at least advise or alarm the second country that this is happening, watch out, in a timely manner, and most importantly, so this information can be treated and decisions are made. I mean, sometimes we see that even two good allies, because there's miscommunication or delays in sharing some information, bad things are happening. So this is my whole concept, is just to make sure that the countries that at least they are under threats today, there is a way of communicating, there's a way of storing such important information and making sure that this information is used and treated by the right people. And this is where technology, and more specifically satellite, come to place.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hassan, would you like to comment about communications and collaborations? You're still on mute, sir.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, sir. There is a small lapse in the. Thank you. Yes, I agree with Mr. Ramsey. There is a huge need of collaboration between African countries, and also already there are programs which are most of these dependent and financed by the United States or the European Union. But we don't really see member states putting their own resources. They always try to seek support externally. Once there is really the member state, they are bearing the cost of their security, then they will find a better way of communicating between themselves. But when it is outsourced through the finance through external partners, then the things, they are not conducive to work very smoothly. So right now there are some organizations, regional organizations, who collaborate, who communicate perfectly, but they are just externally limited to their regions. We don't have a global, and that global is covered either by the EU or by the United States. But autonomous or indigenous African Union communications on this field, there isn't. But regional, yes, they do exist. Like in Southern Africa, like in East Africa, like in West Africa, and so on. But still, they are subjected to support of external inputs. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments. While I'm at you, sir, Hassan, can you perhaps, I know this may be a very short and a very nasty question, but can you provide us some insight as to the security challenges in your region, perhaps, not only in your country?
Oh yeah, that's the most easiest way to talk. It's very straightforward. Somalia has been under the microscope for almost 30 years. We are a country, a society which is in conflict. So we are recovering now. And many of the images that are delivered around the world, some of them, they are mistaken, because now Mogadishu is the fastest growing city in the world, according to the UN. And I mean, a country which is totally destroyed cannot grow so fast. So the things, the country is facing a lot of challenges: terrorism, clan militias, regional hegemonic states that they want to continue to keep us in this state to, let's say, to foment their interests and so on. And yes, so Somalia is facing different challenges, multi-challenges with itself and with its neighbor also. And also largely because now the attention of many countries is being directed to the oceans also, which means that external forces to the area are also very interested, because Somalia has got a very large stretch coastline, and not only for the resources, but also for geopolitically, strategically, you know. So we are placed privilegedly in a equidistant place in many regions. So that's why Somalia makes it a country of interest. And recently also the ruling of the International Court of Justice has cleared many of the obstacles that were on the way of our country, not my country. So regionally, there is the most challenging problem now, we can say, is Ethiopia. They are going through a difficult phase of their history. They are our neighbors. We are all interconnected. We might have had in the past animosity and wars, but today we want to move forward and create, if it's possible, the alliance of these countries of the Horn of Africa. This is something which is well liked in Somalia, which will, of course, solve many of the political problems that were existing in the past. So today, we might have wished bad Ethiopia in the past, but not now. Now we wish them well. We hope that they will resolve their problems as soon as possible, because whatever happens to them affects us. They are a huge country with a huge population, and our country is very fragile. And I'm sure that if things degenerate in Ethiopia, also in Somalia will be degenerated. Yeah. So basically, we are affected by this instability in Ethiopia, which the government of Ethiopia is trying to solve it, rightly or wrongly. And the choices they have taken is up to them. But we can say that some of the choices, they are detrimental to the stability of the region. But we understand, because we went through and we are going through the same things. And just as Ethiopia is a more vertebrated state, stable state, than the fragility of Somalia, which is being maintained by the international community. Yeah. But of course, we understand their choices, that sometimes you have to use, when there is military rebellions and negotiations, they end up, then the language of force only is understandable in that case. It's not that we advocate, but we can understand that sometimes things, they have to be resolved forcibly. Yeah. So this is basically the main problem we have. Somalia internally has got its own stabilization process going through. After a period of warlords, of clan politics, and so on, the country now is settling down. And we have a problem with terrorism, particularly Islamic transnational terrorism. Many countries, they compare Afghanistan with Somalia, but there is a huge difference. The movement was fighting in Afghanistan. They were an indigenous organizations, Islamic-based, but their ambition was to control their country and their societies. And beyond that, they might have interest, but there was the main focus of what they were fighting for. But in Somalia is different. We have a rebellion, which is against any symbol of the Somali state, our culture, our language, our flag, and so on and so on. And they are more oriented toward internationalism than being just minded in taking power and controlling the country, you know. So the attitude is very different. And also we have clan compositions and so on. So we cannot really, many they want to compare Afghanistan, next will be Somalia. It won't happen because our own internal dynamics. Even if the international forces just withdrew like that, certainly these Shabab forces, which are not huge, they might occupy the positions, but after they might be either retaken or we will find a way of, they cannot overrun the capital, for example, or some regions. If they could, they would have done it before. Even now, for the past 5 years, AMISOM, which contributed greatly to Somalia's stability at a price of men and resources financed by the EU and the United States in particular, particularly the EU. And for the past years, the Somali army was conducting its own operations autonomously. They were not helping us, and they were not supporting us, and so on. So it was a needle force staying there, preventing the reconstruction of the Somali army. And I mean that even now the operations going on against Shabab, they were not part of these operations. So the Somali army now is capable of reconstituted decently, but in terms of firepower, it's not superior to Al-Shabaab. Let's say these are light infantry and they have the same kind of equipment. So the game changer will be that our army becomes as a larger firepower, and air support particularly is vital. And a few thousand men. For example, let's say Somali army today is composed of around from 20 to 30,000 men. And AMISOM is around 20,000 men. Altogether is above 50,000 men. And Shabab, altogether and very sparsely distributed, it doesn't even reach 10,000 men. So we see that the solution, to find a solution for Shabab is not really huge. If there is a will and if we put the means into this. Unfortunately, they have been given the status quo, but we want to change this and empower our army so they can have a better capacity and strengthen it, their firepower and heavy equipment, artillery, air reconnaissance, and so on. These kind of things that will give us the edge. Right now, we are on the same level. So AMISOM is the difference, which has got the heavy equipment. And if they don't work with us, then it's difficult, that we continue to keeping them like that. We are not against AMISOM, just to make it very clear that they did a very good job. They sacrificed their men, and they stabilized Somalia. But we reach a point that we have to move beyond that, and themselves also. They are more dependent on their own countries of origin policies than the African Union. And some of the countries, they have a vested interest in Somalia. So, and that's a problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for giving us a very comprehensive insight about the security challenges in your country and in your region. Yes, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, they're all in your area. And I think one of the good things that are happening is if you have major infrastructure projects which can boost the economy as well. I'm aware of a road which Ethiopia is building. I don't know exactly where it will end out, at which port, probably close to your country or next to your country. But, those are things that we need for the economy and for the people to make things grow. We must latch onto different things, but we cannot forget the prime threat. The threat is there, the threat will remain. And Mr. Hassan, I hope you still stay in the chair for many days because, you are very pivotal in trying to solve these problems and to reaching your end state. Can I direct it?
I'd like to make a small comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you. I just touched Ethiopia because it's the main country affecting us right now, which is unstable. Sudan is a stable country, which has got right now, just today, it happened a coup, military coup. It seems that it was successful and the prime minister is detained and so on and so on. And of course, regionally, it goes up to the Mediterranean. The country is affecting us. So, of course, Ethiopia, the port is the Berbera. That road is going to Berbera, and Berbera right now is a breakaway region, separatist region, which claims to be independent. So there is odd quitis. We don't refuse our regions to be developed, but of course, they are dealing with themselves and the Emirate with a separatist entity in the north of Somalia. So this is another problem that needs a political solutions, not militarily, political solutions that hopefully we will find a solution. Thank you.
Thank you for that input. Perhaps let me just relay to something else. Now that you talked about a coup, the question is, should or can the AU do more to preempt coups by sanctioning bad governance and attempts by presidents to extend their terms? Any of you can respond, one after the other, please.
I like to answer, but Ramsey has got the right of answer. I've been talking too much.
No, Mr. Hassan, no, I think this is too much political for me. So I will, again, I'm not in this field. I will let you please give us your ideas and then.
Okay, thank you. Also, the African Union, they have got a mechanism against coups, but unfortunately, coups they happen. So when they happen, they don't have any other means than. Let's say, in West Africa, we had recently 3 coups, one after the other. Young officers, mainly young officers. So the African Union, they cannot do much about it, but legally, they don't welcome, they don't condone, and they ostracize the coup plotters. Yeah. But unfortunately, they have to deal with them because it's the reality. They control their countries. There is no other mechanism except that calling that the rule of law and constitutionality is restored. That's it.
Thank you, sir. My next question would be to you, Ramsey. What is the role of satellite technologies, GEO and NGSO, to fill the gap in Africa and ensure constant observation, communication, and necessary actions?
Thank you, Kus. So, today there are many concerns and needs when it comes to threats. Just to name a few very quickly, accurate and timely information, reliable networks and infrastructure, cyber threats, etc., etc. Africa is a beautiful continent, but it's also a very large continent with a diverse terrains. We have mountains, we have many remote areas. Currently, based on a study that I've read recently, it is estimated that approximately 45% of Africa's population are, more than 10 kilometers away from the nearest reliable infrastructure, more specifically fiber networks, for example, in some areas. In other areas, although you may have some connectivity, but it's unreliable, so it's really very poor infrastructure, or even there are good areas that there's nothing, there's no availability when it comes to infrastructure. Again, satellite technologies such as the solutions provided by SCS, be it GEO or MEO, without going into a lot of technical details, currently SCS operates GEO satellites, but also MEO, so we have O3B, and soon we are launching our O3B mPOWER constellation. With this, we can provide multiple gigabit per second per site and with very low latency, so less than 150 milliseconds. With these type of technologies, I think they are really critical and key for certain applications. And basically it is the only available and secure and most importantly fast deployable solutions. If we take the OODA loop steps, for example, to observe, orientate, and again, when I say orientate, it can be part of this cloud or fusion African center, decide and act. I mean, this is how necessary it is. There's a lot of areas where there's no infrastructure. There are areas where the existing infrastructure is unsecured or unreliable. And I think satellite can bridge the gap here effectively, securely, to ensure, the necessary communications are made for various applications, be it security and border control, ISR, unmanned drones, Navy, Coast Guards, and so on.
Thank you very much. Good response to that question. I would like to move to the east of the country. I wouldn't say ECOWAS, but specifically more to Mali and Burkina Faso. And I just want to make a statement and say the introduction of national or international security forces into a country has proven pivotal in the battle to reclaim the region from a terrorist insurgency. But until the region's social, economic, and political issues are addressed, the insurgency will not stop. So I've also learned from the internet that security forces sometimes caused more civilian fatalities in Mali and Burkina Faso than violent extremist groups. Now that is quite a large concern. Hassan, would you like to comment on the intervention of national and international forces in regions?
Yes, sir. Yes. Sometimes when countries, for example, we are a clear example of international intervention in Somalia. So in the 90s, there was the Operation Restore Hope. That was with good intention, but well prepared. But unfortunately, because they were not understanding the social fabrics, clan interactions, and so on, they failed. And also there was not enough will to impose. Since there was an international mission from the UN, there were many actors with different interests, with different perceptions. So even though the conductor was the United States, and sometimes they are necessary, just in case. The case of Somalia is a very, very clear example. Then in the case of now, as you mentioned, ECOWAS intervening in Sierra Leone, it's intervening in other countries in West Africa. Right now, there is a multinational force, in the north of Nigeria, the participation of Burkina Faso and so on. Because these terrorist organizations, they have trans-border activities. They are not limited only. And sometimes the border area, they have been artificially crafted out of the Berlin Conference. So populations, they are on both or 3 poles, or even sometimes 4 countries distributed. So ethnic groups, they are distributed into different countries. So they move on the border, As you say, a fish cannot live out of the water. So we understand that military solution or repression is not enough. That it's very vital that also social development is put in place, that opportunities are given to the youth, and that the state of welfare improves in our countries, to demotivate these young men to join who are frustrated or who have been brainwashed by this organization. Yes, foreign forces are naturally necessary when there is a state collapse in many countries, whether they are international or whether they are local. Myself, I do welcome that. And if there is a necessity of intervening, I don't mind actually, because it improves the situation. Yeah. Even though there are liabilities and other problems. But globally, they are very positive.
Thank you very much for those comments. I would direct my last question to you, Ramsey, on satellite technologies list. Can you list a few examples on how nations are leveraging SATCOM to detect and manage the threats?
Sure. I mean, I can, at least take some use cases of various collaborations SCS and myself are, doing with various nations, obviously in Africa, but also in Europe, and Asia Pacific and various regions. So again, it can be for threat, but it can be for any type of military activities, or even, public sector activities such as Coast Guard, firefighting, humanitarian missions, and so on. There are like really 3 or 4 key applications that satellite is really very active in, for the simple fact that at least 2 or 3 of them, there's only satellite that can fulfill this communication link between a site where we have police or military people, personnel, and so on, and the headquarters on land. And namely, we're talking about any water activities, maritime activities such as Navy, vessel, Coast Guards, and so on. Any, ISR activity, but more related to the drones or even the manned the airplanes. Only satellite can serve these type of applications because you cannot just put a fiber in the sky or a wireless communication in the air and so on. Some others, again, they are more specifically because most of the military activities, smuggling activities, and so on are happening in remote areas, far away from big cities, obviously, and also, of course, on the borders. And here again, we come back to the infrastructure, not only in Africa, but various countries. You see, the more you tend to go outside of the city, even if the infrastructure there, you don't have the right infrastructure to push a lot of amount of data, and latency sometimes can be an issue, and so on. So we're talking about border control. Communication on the move is also one of the key activities, whereby we're providing, for example, for military vehicle or police SUVs, a small antenna, so we can push, several megabits per second for them to communicate and transmit data with the command and the control centers with their headquarters and so on. So really, there's a lot of applications that currently we are involved in, and I'm sure we can discuss with various government partners in Africa to see how we can extend our support and ideas and know-how on these type of technologies in the near future.
Thank you. And what are the quality of these pictures from satellite communication systems?
So we've been, personally, I was involved not a long time ago in a trial using a geo satellite. Geo satellite are the standard satellite, although the technology has progressed significantly the last couple of years, we're talking about very high throughput satellites. But again, due to the physical limitation, which is the physical layer, the satellite is more or less 38,000 kilometers, from Earth. So you have a good 500 to 600 milliseconds. Configuring the right amount of bandwidth with the right amount of, technologies when it comes to class of service and quality of service. I've seen really excellent results for video surveillance cameras using GEO satellites. This is on the GEO, but on the non-NGSOs, which is LEO or MEO, and as you know, SCS is pioneering the mid-Earth orbit. These satellites are more, around 8,000 kilometers. We have been serving our customers since 2014, and very soon we're gonna launch a new constellation, which is MEO, but we call it OTB Empower, that will provide even more flexibility and throughput per satellite. So typically we can support multiple gigabit per link, like for example, per video camera, assuming we have the right antennas and so on. And the latency is very low. We're talking less than 150 milliseconds. And here, if we have even more video to stream, because of the high throughput we can provide and because of the low latency, we can share hopefully in the future with yourself or with some colleagues some real live video streaming on our O3B from some of the Navy vessels across the globe, and it's perfect. It's really perfect. So yeah, no question asked when it comes to these technologies for video and for any other type of applications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That sounds very exciting. Mr. Hassan, are you utilizing some of these?
Actually, I wanted to, yes, we use some of them, like these phones, Thoraya, and another company. Sometimes we have to. Some commanders, so they can communicate safely in case of the, our networks or the radio, they can be intercepted, no? So for safe communication, we use it. And we find that these are quite costly. So I wanted to ask her, have they dropped down the prices, or is it affordable, or how exactly? If you can tell us if they are more affordable than before, because satellite communication, they are quite costly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Historically, satellite communication is costly due to the big capex to put and launch a satellite and put it in its orbital slot. Nevertheless, the last few years we have seen a good decline because again, technology is becoming a bit cheaper. But talking about Thoraya, they have excellent service. I know them very well, but we're talking here about L-band solution. They offer like satellite phones. So these are very small data rates communication. At SCS, we're talking about really the high data rates application, whereby we can provide multiple meg or multiple gig for a big military camp securely with the right encryption also, and so on. So I'd say the cost per megabit is very competitive, but beyond the cost, what the benefits of this technology that will bring to the country, be it on the military side, but also on the non-military side for building the digital infrastructure. You mentioned a very valid reason, Mr. Hassan, a few minutes ago about how to build the country's infrastructure, how to enhance the education, how to give a meaning for these young people to be an active part of society. At least they don't have to worry about eating in the evening. So they get away of whatever not good stuff they can be exposed to. And again, technology and telecommunications, satellite or non-satellite, this is a key component. And I think considering Africa, considering the difficult terrain and the time to market that satellite can bring, in a matter of few weeks, we can just eliminate a big city with data and video traffic. Versus fiber can take a lot of years. It can be capex hungry. Satellite is more opex. So again, it has to be built on a specific business case and weighing the benefits and its cost. But I would be more than happy to connect with you after this panel to share some ideas and see if we can help by being cost effective, of course.
Okay, thank you for the dialogue there. Gentlemen, I think we're almost done. Mr. Hassan, I'd just like to say to you, I'll be visiting your country on Friday for a very specific reason. I'll only be there for 3 or 4 days. So I don't know if I'll be able to see you. I would really much appreciate if I could.
It will be a pleasure for me to welcome you. You just give me the dates, and if you need, even if you want, I can pick you up on the airport.
Oh, fantastic. I'm arriving on Friday there. I'll have to check, but I can communicate with you by email.
Perfect. You just tell me your dates of arrival, time. We welcome you at the airport.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, I think that wraps it up. Let's end off by having a last comment from either of you. And then I think we've done well. I'm very excited. I'm very grateful for the participation that you've given. It's been very open, very frank, and very much appreciated. So just some final words from you, Ramsey, perhaps?
I mean, thanks, Kus, Noor, and Ian, TG, and Mr. Hassan again for giving me the chance to share some thoughts with you. Again, I'm looking forward, personally to be. Hopefully, next time we will have a physical event, post-COVID. So at least not only we can discuss virtually, but at least we can meet various key players and stakeholders in Africa physically and build some relations. Again, thanks a lot, and good luck in all your projects, and best of luck for all the African nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you very much for sharing us, Mr. Coach-Hubert. I will be happy to welcome you on Friday. I enjoyed this exchange, a frank exchange. Actually, the note of frankness you started yourself with your introduction, and I follow suit because myself also a very frank person. I don't like to beat the bush about, and just be straightforward is the best policy. And we want to thank for the organizers of this meeting, in particular Ayad and Noor. We really appreciate the work they put into it, and the coordination and the effort. I'm quite happy to have met you. I'm also very happy to have met Mr. Ramsey Mr. Ramsey
Kanfor.
Kanfor, yes, sorry, because it was missing some of the words.
No, it's a difficult family name.
No, thank you very much. And we welcome you. Satellite communications is the future. We cannot build infrastructure, physical infrastructure, so the digital domain is the way forward. Of course, they must be affordable, financeable, and we look forward to interact with you and see your products seriously. And if we can afford also, why not? We can try to make also deals on that. And it's not only on the state, so also there are some private companies like the big telecoms now in Somalia, there are 3 now big companies. Also, they might be interested to be also in the private sector. It's not only, the state. So we can also help you to be in touch with them also, organize a meeting with them also. So this was a very, very constructive meeting. Thank you, I really enjoyed. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think then we'll hand over to the organizers, and I wish you well, and may God bless you.